starting with, of course, the yield story. I know that you've been saying front-end yields, they need to be moving higher for some time. But at what point can we say the pendulum has swung and the room for yields to move higher just isn't there anymore? At what point do we finally have everything priced in?
I guess it depends on your time span here. I think if you look in terms of inflation, front-end yields have not done near enough yet. Inflation is suggesting that two-year yields need to be substantially higher still. I think more than another 100 basis points higher. We are only just at the edge of restrictive policy. And if we don't get restrictive policy soon, then we put in a new higher floor in inflation and inflation expectations, and we start a new inflation cycle, but from a much higher base. So the Fed needs to get much higher in rates. However, why do I say the time span matters? Well, we've had a very, very substantial change over the past 4 or 5 weeks in yields, and these things rarely go in a straight line. So while I think that overall in the coming months we're going to see much higher front-end yields, I wouldn't surprise me if the coming weeks leads to a little bit more two-way volatility.
Okay, this question is probably a little bit out of left field, but I wonder if the Bank of Canada looks a little bit silly now for saying that they're pausing. They're sticking with that pause because they want to wait and see how the data comes in, how the market, how the economy is affected from what they've already done. Does declaring a pause like that, which many people thought the Fed would do, does it not work in this environment when there's so much volatility, so much uncertainty in the data?
I think it's an absolutely fine thing to do, and I don't think they look stupid. I think there's been kind of very mixed data out of Canada. There's obviously that great jobs data recently, but there has been some other data which has been a little bit more disappointing. And we do know that there are long and variable lags. The question is where do central banks want to be on the spectrum? I am very much in the camp that the Fed needs to cause a recession. They need to hurt the jobs market to control the inflation problem, and therefore we need to get restrictive, and they need to err on the side of doing too much too quickly rather than too little. But for different central banks, the calculations are a little bit more different. And in Canada, you have the massive housing market situation, which makes it much more dangerous for the Bank of Canada going too far.
Right, much more sensitivity when it comes to those mortgages. Another way you could say what you just said, Mark, in terms of needing to slow down the economy would be what Nagel said, the Bundesbank president, that ECB policy must be more stubborn than inflation. Does it make sense that the ECB is going to be just as aggressive, perhaps, as the Fed, if not more?
I mean, right now, the inflation data, and we're going to get more today, is hammering home that the ECB absolutely needs to be hawkish. And at the moment, more hawkish than the Fed because they are farther behind. The Fed got ahead on this cycle, so the ECB needs to kind of stay on these 50 basis points hikes at the moment to catch up and start going to restrictive policy, which again, like the Fed, they're only just entering.
Yep. As you say, Mark, more excitement with Eurozone inflation data coming later today. Remember, you can stay up to date with analysis and insight from Mark and the rest of the team. Just go MLive Go on your terminal.